This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen, with Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you this morning. Day one of SEC Media Days. We'll have you covered all day long from out there in Nashville. Jay coming up with the halftime show, and then Heath Klein coming up from 3 to 6 with Game Time. Things will get kicked off with Greg Sankey speaking to the media at 12:30, and then we'll jump into the first teams, which is LSU. Starting off the day out there. So exciting time. Plenty to talk about as far as that goes. We'll certainly touch on that as the show goes along. But Wes, always keeping an eye on recruiting, and a big name prospect for South Carolina has a commitment coming up later this afternoon, that being Malcolm Ziglar.
Yeah, coming up 1 o'clock. It appears, he's got a top 6, but really I think you can narrow this thing down. As usual, if there's a final 5, final 6, final 4, there's really usually a final 2 or 3. And for Ziglar, I would say final 3 has been South Carolina, North Carolina, Notre Dame. Final 2, and the 2 schools that I actually think are possibly the choice today would be South Carolina and North Carolina. This has been one of those things where for most of his recruitment, or at least the stretch run, I should say, it has felt like UNC was going to be the pick. And, I know that on the UNC side, they have been confident they were going to be the pick. But there's been just enough sort of chatter out there that South Carolina could maybe be a surprise pick here that that we're going to cover it. And, Mike Uva's going to have coverage from the announcement in case it is South Carolina. Generally, people will say, all right, hey, if Gamecock Central's there, that means they feel good about it being South Carolina. They take it as a sort of little hint, nod, wink that it's going to be South Carolina. I would caution everyone not to take it that way this time. But he's a big-time prospect, would be a big-time get for South Carolina, and there's just enough out there that makes you think it's possible that that we're going to have some coverage from it. So we'll see. I think that the in-state with North Carolina, they tend to just do very, very well keeping guys at home. That the guys that show initial interest and visit them a lot, which Ziglar has, they tend to do well with. So we'll see if South Carolina can pull the shocker later on today. There's been a little bit of, I would say last 24, 48 hours, a little bit of mixed information out there that leads you to believe it could be one or the other.
When you say mixed information, what kind of things would you be hearing that would give you that idea?
I can't tell you that, Tyler.
You can't tell me that.
No, I mean, generally speaking, I would just say the mixed information being that North Carolina still feels good, but there have been some indications from people around Ziglar that the choice could be South Carolina instead.
And you mentioned this in your article in Gamecock Central. Ziglar's been one of those guys that's really played it close to the vest on which way he's leaning and his thoughts on a lot of these schools. So how difficult is that to try and kind of predict for a guy like that is a lot more reserved?
Yeah, I mean, for one, he doesn't do interviews. Doesn't do a ton of interviews. We were lucky enough to be able to get him on the record after his OV to South Carolina. I think he did some interviews probably after each big official visit. Again, South Carolina, Notre Dame, North Carolina were kind of the three big ones there. And, but for much of the process, we weren't even aware, how strongly South Carolina was truly in it because he just hadn't talked much and hadn't talked about what schools he wanted to visit. And that's really how you get your baseline of, hey, this is a guy we need to track and this is a guy we don't, because you're going to offer literally hundreds plus of prospects. So there's kind of a narrowing down process and guys we need to track. So for him, it was early on, is he a guy to watch or not? And then as the process went on, he sets an official. And it was kind of like after every single official visit, that school felt pretty good. And so you have that. And a lot of times you have that when it's a kid like Ziglar who just is super. The funny thing is he hasn't really done a lot of interviews, but if you meet him, he's super happy, smiling, kind of outgoing kid, just doesn't do the whole media thing. So I could see why schools would be like, oh, that guy had a great time. That guy gave it, that guy gave us great reviews of the visit. Well, that's kind of partially just his personality. He's a happy-go-lucky kid. So, excuse me, I think for him, it's just going to be a matter of what has happened down the stretch here, and can South Carolina pull off what I believe would be an upset, in the end for him.
Elsewhere, and again, his commitment coming up today at 1 o'clock in Gamecock Central. We'll have that coverage for you. Another prospect from the Tar Heel State, somebody we've been keeping a close eye on, is Jonathan Paler. And when talking about his commitment, it seems to continue to be pushed further and further out. There was some idea that he was going to maybe commit at the end of this month. That's now being potentially moved to early August, and there's some thoughts and feelings that may even get pushed further into mid to late August now.
Yeah, my guess right now, and this thing has been very fluid, like you said. So it was July 28th was the tentative date. That's actually what he told us right after his official visit to South Carolina. He said, it's July 28th, but don't lock that in yet. That's just kind of what I'm thinking. Then this was never put out publicly, but internally his thought was August 5th. And now it appears it's been pushed back a little bit later than that. My guess is, and it's more than a guess, but my thought is it's probably going to come somewhere in that early to mid-August window at this point. But you kind of have to acknowledge people kind of have to realize you're dealing with a moving target here at times in recruiting, so that could easily change again. But it's kind of the opposite if you look at it from South Carolina's perspective of what's going on with Ziglar, in that if Ziglar is sort of the perceived, North Carolina's perceived favorite was Ziglar, South Carolina's trying to play spoiler. South Carolina has been the actually public favorite for Paler, and NC State is kind of trying to play spoiler there, and I think it is safe to say that the battle here has tightened considerably down the stretch. This is something you see a lot when it becomes decision time. These are 17-year-old kids trying to make the biggest decision of their lives. Start to, consider all factors that are involved. So I would say here for South Carolina, you still kind of like their chances, but you have to acknowledge NC State. They've had them on campus more than anywhere else. And it has felt to me throughout the entire process like Paler, it kind of reminded me of some guys maybe early Spurrier era for South Carolina. When they would get them on campus, they'd show them every single thing they had to offer. They'd throw the kitchen sink at them, let them know how much they're wanted, and it was just kind of like they were looking for a reason not to go to South Carolina, that they were looking for something a little bit, quote, better, a little bit bigger. And it has felt to me for some time like Paylor has just maybe been looking for something a little bit more big time than NC State and, South Carolina with the SEC and better crowds and stuff like that. I believe has sort of been where his mind has been. Could he play earlier? Would he have maybe a path for that at NC State? Because he is kind of a smaller guy, muscular but smaller. Maybe so. Maybe that's what they're selling. But I do think this thing's tight down the stretch. Percentage-wise, probably still lean South Carolina. But that's something people got to understand with all these big-time final targets, at least for the summer. It is tight on a lot of these guys. So it could easily go either way with pretty much most of the guys we're talking about, because you're talking about big-time recruiting battles, schools that have been involved for 2 years in some cases, and you're talking about high schoolers who, can change their mind quite quickly.
And with Paylor, there's an opportunity to get him back on campus one more time before this commitment announcement, whenever that may be, with another cookout coming up here in a little over a week. Yeah,
cookout July 28th. He has actually said publicly he's leaning towards taking another visit to South Carolina. I tend to think that gives a little bit of credibility to the idea that maybe the NC State stuff is a little bit of sort of building towards the announcement. A lot of times guys want it to seem pretty close when they get close to the announcement. Would you really be visiting South Carolina, a week and a half, 2 weeks before your final announcement, if you already know where you're going? And he also has said, like, I have a pretty good idea where I'm going. So I tend to think if he lands in Columbia on the 28th, then if there are any lingering questions, South Carolina can figure them out. But it could be a sign that he kind of knows where he's going. So, I think Carolina's in a solid spot here, but it's not a slam dunk.
Elsewhere, Daniel Hill, the 4-star running back out of Mississippi, recently announced his top 5, which includes Mississippi State, Southern California, Bama, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And similar to what it seems like it's going to be for Paylor, his commitment does come at the end of August on the 23rd.
Yes. Excellent job saying Southern Cal, yes. Tyler.
I'm getting better.
The Gamecock fans out there appreciate you for that. But, again, of that group, I don't think anybody's really a factor anymore except for South Carolina and Alabama. Southern Cal, not really a factor. Tennessee was thought to maybe be in it at one point. It would take a shift, I think, for them to be heavily involved in the actual decision. At this point, it would be a major shocker if it wasn't South Carolina or Alabama. Talked earlier late last week, early this weekend, with someone who's pretty tied in there with Hill. He still thinks that South Carolina is probably the pick. He's felt that way for a while. That said, you just never count out Alabama either. So I think people are getting a feel for these big recruiting battles when guys set announcements and sort of set arbitrary dates. It's one thing when a guy just says, "Oh, I know where I want to go," and then they commit.
Right.
I feel like it's different when a guy says, "I want to be committed before my senior year," and they set a date.
Right.
And they put this time sort of constraint on themselves, and then it puts some pressure on the decision. So I think that there's been some stuff out there about, do people around Daniel Hill want him at Alabama, want him at South Carolina? There was some questions about, does his family want him closer to home in Alabama? I think there's maybe one family member who maybe prefers, Alabama, but I don't think this is a case of the family itself overall preferring a school. And from everything we've heard, Hill's going to be the guy to make the final decision. And, I believe South Carolina is where he wants to be. And so we'll see where that goes.
Mentioning that cookout a little over a week from now, he's unsure if he's going to be attending that. And coincidentally, Alabama does have one the day after. So things can obviously change in a short period of time, and that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that one was kind of funny trying to sort through, because there were some just various reports out there. Hey, he's expected at Alabama. Hey, expected at South Carolina. Well, then Hill told me specifically, I don't know. And I was like, on either one? He's like, no, I don't know on either one. Then he indicated to Chad Simmons, who has covered his recruitment for a while on 3 national side, basically indicated he wasn't going to take any more visits in July. This is kind of it. So I think there's probably some pressure from all sides. Hey, come to our cookout. Hey, and Hill's probably like, I just need to maybe take a step back here, or maybe he doesn't want to show his hand at this point either. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. The 28th really could be a make or break day for South Carolina, because you look at Dylan Stewart as well. They are certainly making a push to get him back in town for that as well, which would be like, I think, visit 9 or 10 or something like that. Again, spending time with future Gamecocks and guys that are really already set on attending USC. So I think that'll be something to track as well. But all these guys could be on hand for the cookout. Doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get them if they don't come. But if you do get them in town, that means you're going to be really in a spot to set yourself out well going into these commitment ceremonies.
Right. And again, Malcolm Ziglar's commitment coming up today at 1 o'clock, and Gamecock Central will have all the coverage for you on that. Speaking of Gamecock Central, y'all talked with Spencer Rattler the other day in an interview set up by Garnet Trust. You guys dove into a lot of different things for this upcoming season, specifically revolving around the offense. We'll get to some of those cuts coming up next. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Guys, we tell you every single day about the sub of the day, and today is one of my favorite subs of the day. It is the Meatball Sub, Meatball Monday. That means if you go to FirehouseSubs.com or if you hit the Firehouse apps, you can get a medium meatball sub for just $7.99. You can do the small for $5.99. However, I highly recommend that everyone just goes ahead and does the medium. Why would you want a small when you can get a medium? The Rapid Rescue is the easiest way to order. You can save all your information on there. You can save your favorites. You can save your payment information. Hit the Rapid Rescue, and then voila, you're going to have it waiting on you as you enter the store. Very quick, efficient way to get your lunch. I have not tried yet the new pepperoni pizza meatball sub. Chris has. However, it is very much like my favorite way to enjoy a sub, which initially was the meatball sub, add pepperoni. From what I hear, Tyler, they have actually also added garlic butter to the bread. Final touch there.
We're going to be out there on Friday. We're going to have to try this out.
Yes, so Friday, be on the lookout. We're going to be at the Casey Firehouse Subs, and I'm going to try my first pepperoni pizza meatball sub, and I'll give everyone a review right there on location. But as always, shout out Firehouse Subs, our presenting sponsor. Shout out to our good friend Larry as well. Firehouse Subs, you guys are great, and we appreciate you.
All right, more from Spencer Rattler coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you on this Monday morning. As I mentioned before the break, you and Chris got to talk with Spencer Rattler the other day in an interview set up by Garnet Trust, and got to talk with him for about 15 minutes. And obviously one of the biggest stories going into the season is the new offense under Dow Loggins. And look, we're not going to know what it actually looks like until we get into actually playing the games starting in week 1 against North Carolina. But Rattler talked a little bit about the comfort level that he has so far being ingrained in this offense for a couple of months. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, we've just been putting all the pieces together, complementing what we do well. obviously adding some new stuff from last year, being a complete new system, new verbiage, just a new mindset, I would say. And it's gone in the right direction. We all love it. Just playing to our strengths. That's what I could say, getting the balls to our best players. So many playmakers on the offensive side of the ball at every position. And it's been fun to work with all the guys and just improve every day.
And again, it's one of those things we're not going to know until we actually see it in action. But everything we've heard up to this point is promising. It's what you want to hear, right?
Yeah, I mean, Rattler, to a man, will tell you that, they like what they're doing on offense. I think the most interesting part about it has been how open Dow Loggins has been about letting Rattler sort of put his own spin on the offense and have actual input. I think there's such thing especially in coaching, as having too big of an ego and wanting for the offense to be yours as a play caller and wanting to take sort of ownership of this offense and put your own spin on it. And in some cases, it can be to the detriment of actual success on the field. And so I've liked from day one, Loggins has first of all said, hey, this is our biggest recruit right now, is to get Rattler back in a South Carolina uniform. This is when he arrived, of course, and it was still up in the air if Rattler was going to be back for 2023. And then he said, look, this is your offense. You can, you have the paintbrush here. You can sort of put your own spin on it. And, I think at this point, the opportunity to go out there and put it all together, I think the pieces are in place, but the question that we won't have answered until we actually see some games is, can Loggins take what Spencer called, all these playmakers, and can he package all this up to where it's a cohesive offense that makes sense? I think the problem the last 2 years, if you're going to sort of dial in on one issue, it was that there was just so much going on. It never felt sort of like a cohesive scheme. So I think that is the key. That's what South Carolina has to do. I do think it's a pretty good sign that Rattler, not being asked about the playmakers, not being, hey, can you talk about your teammates?
Right.
He sort of made a point to volunteer about the sort of number of playmakers they think they have on offense. This is a guy who was at Oklahoma. This is a guy who threw to basically a receiving core that was all 4- and 5-star players at Oklahoma early in his career. So he knows what that looks like. He knows what athletes are supposed to look like at those positions, and still goes out of his way to talk up what they have. So I think all these things are good signs, but you always have to put that caveat. You got to wait and see what actually happens on the field.
Right. And speaking of Rattler having his input on how this offense was built, he did speak about that as well. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, something I love about Dowell is, he's very open. He loves to hear input from his quarterbacks. And, him and I have had great talks. Obviously, he wants to do, like you said, stuff that I'm comfortable with. I feel like I can do anything on the football field, but, there's certain things I feel like not just myself, but the other guys included do well. So, just letting me kind of be the point guard, letting me distribute, play fast, play with a clear mind, and really just not keep it simple, but, do what we do well. And it could be a long play call or it could be a one-word play call. As long as the play works, let's keep running it until it doesn't.
And as you mentioned, Spencer Rattler, somebody that's been around the college game for a while, playing at Oklahoma before coming here. And, Dow Loggins is new to calling plays in the college game. So there's a lot to be learned on his side. But as you mentioned, Spencer Rattler was the biggest recruit get for him in getting him to come back for another year and building that offense around him. As Rattler mentioned, his skill set, what he does well, being able to distribute the ball and getting it out to these playmakers. And again, we're still a month and a half away from fully seeing it in action to where we can kind of break it down and analyze it. But, that's what we wanted out of this, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think, Tyler, we can maybe tie this into Cut 11 as well. But the interesting thing that has caught my attention about this entire offseason, this entire process, has been that they have sort of, I guess, shied away from wanting to call this an up-tempo offense. I think I think it was Trey Knox that said something about in one of the press conferences about it being an up-tempo offense. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was. And then Beamer sort of kind of jokingly was like, I guess we're going up-tempo at all times, but has been quick to say, look, this isn't an up-tempo only offense. And I think they want to be versatile in being able to, as Spencer said, do one-word calls, get to the line, get in a rhythm, go play fast, while also having it within their package of plays and sort of their scheme on offense to be able to be deliberate, to huddle if they want, to be specific. I think there are pros and cons to quick-paced, one-word offensive calls, and there are also pros and cons to the longer, more wordy things. Some people say, well, what is the point of that? Well, you can get more detail-oriented. You can, I guess the best way to say it is present more tweaks or specific changes to a particular play with the longer play call. And you can say, hey, we're going to make this one add-on to this play that changes things just a little bit to give us a little bit better look against what we're facing defensively. So, I think there are positives and negatives to both sides, but they want to be able to do both. And I think, you hear a lot about the offense last year and the complexity and all those things. They want to sort of be able to do what they did at the end of last year, but still kind of have the best of both worlds, I think. And I did think, Joshua Simon, who, great interview, I thought, fantastic dude, just very interesting on and off the field. We had a good Garnet Trust interview with him last week, and we were asking him about the offense, and he called it. This is kind of what they want it to be.
Sure.
He said they wanted it to be basically like a well-oiled, finely tuned race car.
Yep.
And so we asked Spencer what he thought about that description.
That's a good description. We want to be fast, but we want to slow it down and be able to do what we need to do. We can change the tempo whenever. Last year we could have done the same thing, but just having you got to change a few things up here and there and just do what you're comfortable with and do what's working. That could be anything. So, well-oiled race car is a good description. Well-oiled machine. Paintbrush. I love all these descriptions we got.
And it's funny that Simon's the one to make that comment, being that he's a tight end. And we know a big point of this offense, the hope for it at least, is that they get those tight ends involved more than what Satterfield was doing last year. And I brought this up earlier, the fiasco with Jaheim Bell in the Missouri game, where he ends up getting no touches and everything, and all the fallout that happened from that. But there's the feeling, especially coming over as a tight ends coach from Arkansas, that they're going to be featured a lot more, and a guy like Simon is going to play a key role in this well-oiled race car of an offense.
Absolutely. And I think two tight ends, two tight end sets, that was something you maybe last offseason you might say, well, are they going to be able to run as much too tight as they have in the past because they've had so much changeover at that position. Now that you've seen what Trey Knox can do and seen what Josh Simon can do this past spring, I think there's no doubt you're still going to see a lot of two tights. And, I think especially early on with everything they were asking some of the tight ends to do last year, there wasn't always a complete understanding of everything the tight ends are being asked to do. And, I think when you look at Trey Knox and you look at Joshua Simon, I think both those guys are actually going to be in a better position to make an impact than Jaheim Bell was last year. Satterfield really truly alluded to it last year when he was talking about the reps and the snaps and, being able to play better without the ball, being able to run the correct routes at all times. Like there were issues there, and I don't think those issues will be there with Simon and Knox. And so these two guys are going to be a huge part of what they do, man. And I do think it's pretty interesting, Tyler. I was thinking about it as we were listening to Spencer talk. These guys have been very good at still not telling us at all what the heck to actually expect from this offense schematically. Yeah. Like, I think from a mindset, Spencer used the word mindset.
Yeah.
I think we kind of have a feel for what they want to be from a mindset standpoint, but I'm talking from a literal,
X's and O's.
They haven't told us a thing.
And we're not going to know anything until that first game against North Carolina. Coming up next, the media guide came out over the weekend, and we'll dive into a few of the quirks and things to look out for in regards to some of the players for this upcoming season. Talk about that next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, 107.5 The Game.
Hey, we've all got sports fans in our lives that maybe they have a birthday or even, looking ahead to Christmas. I know it's a long time from now, but you never quite know what gift to get these people in your lives. And I've got a great idea for you. Going over to our friends at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia, maybe that special sports fan in your life has a photo or a jersey or a flag or basically anything pertaining to their team, and you want to do something special for that. Gold Line Framing can do a custom framing job for you. That could be artwork, like I said, jerseys, flags, canvases, pretty much anything. My friend Kendall Walsh and manager Johnny James, they're going to take care of you. They've been in business over there for over 20 years. They're at 511 12th Street. In store, they've actually got an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items all for you to look for there. And if you've got questions, just give them a call. It's 803-739-1337. They are open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and then Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're also on Instagram. They're always posting their latest prints and gifts from in-store. That's at Gold Line Framing SC. Again, our friends Gold Line Framing in West Columbia. Hit them up for any and all of your custom framing needs.
Taking a look at the media guide coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on.
For a limited time, Sweet Deals is offering qualified listeners the vacation of a lifetime. An all-inclusive 5-day, 4-night stay in a suite for just 2 adults and up to 2 children in Cancun, Mexico for just $299. This opportunity is valued at more than $2,600. That's right, a $2,600 vacation for $299, and it's all-inclusive, meaning all your food and drinks are included. Attendance is required at a presentation for Vacation Club ownership, but who cares? There's no purchase necessary, and you have a 30-day money-back guarantee if you change your mind. Do not miss this exclusive luxury vacation offer from SweetDeals.com. $299 for 4 nights at an all-inclusive resort in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. Go to SweetDeals.com right now and snag this once-in-a-lifetime offer. That's SweetDeals.com.
107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
And welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler and Wes along with you on this Monday morning. Coming up at noon, Jay, live from SEC Media Days for the halftime show, and then Heath Klein coming up at 3 o'clock for his usual game time show. As I mentioned before the break, we got the media guide that came out over the weekend, and it's always interesting to kind of look through it, see some quirks, some obviously jersey numbers for the newer guys, what height and weight certain guys are listed at, and you said you noticed a few things that really stood out to you from it.
Yeah, I thought the first thing, and this is flown completely under the radar until this came out, was that South Carolina added somebody new to their strength staff that actually some people who really follow this stuff might be somewhat familiar with, but Jamil Walker was one of the names when we were initially tracking South Carolina's first strength coach opening under Shane Beamer. They, of course, ended up hiring Luke Day. He is still the strength coach to this day. Well, Jamil Walker was the head strength coach at Arkansas. And so he is no longer at Arkansas as of this past offseason, but South Carolina has actually hired him into a support role there, or here, I should say. I believe it goes back to when Beamer was at Georgia, that the two of them were on staff there together. And he obviously was familiar with and liked what he had seen from Walker. So, I mean, again, anytime you can add a guy to your staff that has the experience he does, even in a support role is I think, a great move. Like you said, numbers are in. I think the one that probably people are most interested in knowing would be Nick Harbor, going to wear number 8. We had kind of wondered what number he might grab, so he grabs 8. I think probably one of the few, maybe only single-digit number that would have been left, I think, for that spot. Going through them in my head.
Yeah, I think so. Now, you can have duplicate numbers offense and defense.
Yeah, but
but you're, as far as
even as far as offense goes,
yeah.
I think Trey Knox is 1, Juice is 3, Colton Gauthier is 4, DeCarrion is 5, I think Josh Simon is 6, Rattler is 7, and Doty is 9.
Yeah, I guess so.
So hopefully I didn't screw any of those up off the top of my head. But so Harbor is 8. Some people don't care about that. Some people very much care about that. If you want to get a jersey,
which absolutely.
Go ahead, get your 8. It seems like that's pretty locked in. And some different sizes here. Joyner already had told us actually here on the Garnet Trust hour that he was up to 225. He is now listed at 229. So continues to put on some weight to sort of hold up at that running back position. Let's see, who else? Harbor listed at 241. So big guy, 6'5", 240 plus. Kind of interesting. Xavier McLeod came in, I think he was in the 330 range.
I see 320 listed here.
And is now down to 290.
I see 284.
So,
but yeah, it's slimmed down quite a bit.
Yeah. And Harbor actually 247 now from what Mike Uva posted. But anyway, I sometimes take these with a grain of salt, but it is interesting to see the changes in weights of guys from one sort of section of the year to another. But yeah, McLeod, that 330 number was told to me at one point. So again, probably not officially on there, but he's basically dropped quite a bit.
Yeah, that's pretty
of weight and reshaped himself a little bit. And that's a guy I think we said this in the spring. You like the depth they have at defensive tackle, but he has the talent, if he keeps pushing, that he could be one of the true freshmen that plays. And Shane Beamer has said, hey, probably going to play a freshman at every position. I think he's got a chance to get in there and play. Wanamaker is listed, kind of light. I think that's something to keep an eye on there at right tackle.
As far as guys gaining weight, I see Mo Kaba made almost about a 20-pound jump from, and obviously he's returning from the, his injury, but goes from about 235 in the spring to now listed at 253.
Yeah, so, and he's coming off the injury. I think that's something to keep an eye on there. Hopefully he's still got his movement skills that he had, before. I'll tell you, to me, an interesting kind of question within the question for this team. Who plays the true middle linebacker spot? Who plays the will linebacker spot? And what does that do to allow these guys to get on the field? Because, you look at last year, Mo has played both, but he was playing more of the Mike last year. Stone Blanton, it appeared, was playing the Mike in practice during the spring. Well, Stone was a guy they consistently mentioned as coming on strong and having a really big offseason. So, you had Debo Williams, I think, playing the will during the spring. So how does this play out as far as getting your best 11 on the field, getting your top 2 linebackers on the field? I think you've got a pretty interesting little battle at place there. But, who plays what spot? Because they aren't absolutely identical in terms of what is asked of those 2 spots. And so you do wonder with Mo, is that a planned gain? Is some of that from, not being able to do as much with the knee? Is that where he wants to be? I don't know. Maybe we get Mo back in here before the season starts and ask him ourselves.
That'd be awesome. That's a quick peek at the media guide for South Carolina ahead of the season. We'll come back on the other side, wrap up today's edition, talk a little bit of media days as things get rolling here in just under an hour. You are listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. 107.5 The Game.
Guys, we've been telling you for the last couple of weeks about these brand new Sony video cameras that they're installing here at the studio. And you may not need something quite that high-tech in your studio or your home office, but any of your other needs, they can actually take care of you. Our friends at Integrated Media can take care of any and all of your home audio visual needs. If you're wanting a new TV, you got a little bit of time before football begins, but not that much time. So you might want to go ahead and be checking out what your options are. Maybe you want to add a new TV to the wall in the man cave. They can actually not only help you pick one out, they can come in, they can install it, they can hang it on the wall for you, they can handle the surround sound for you, and they can even set it up to where you have speakers going to different areas of the house. They can make sure your internet is where it needs to be as far as not having any buffering or any issues on that as well, so that you have crystal clear picture and steady streaming for the game. Our friends at Integrated Media, again, can take care of any and all of your home audiovisual needs. If you want another look, sort of all the things they can do, go to Integrated Media Inc. That's integratedmediainc.com.
For decades, Rolling Stone has set the bar for entertainment publications. Today, Rolling Stone Music Now takes over in podcast form.
It is incredible. Beyonce is in this place that I think is so enviable. I mean, it's so interesting that she starts with ballads.
Yeah, when I opened the live stream, it's like, what's going on? I thought this was going to be a different tone for the opening of the concert, but it is really cool that she's doing this moment, as intimate as you can get in a Beyonce stadium show.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you for a few more minutes. We're handing things over to Jay, who is out at SEC Media Days for the halftime show. Terry will also be here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. It's funny. I've actually got a live feed of our booth at Media Days, and I'm just watching Jay walk around talking on the phone, and I don't even think he knows the camera's there and that I can see him.
You can see Jay right now?
Well, he just walked out of frame, but yes, I can see him walking around.
So should we spend the next 7 minutes making fun of him and he has no idea we're doing it?
Yeah, whenever he walks back into frame, I'll let you know. But he's on the phone talking to somebody, but I don't think he's aware that I can see him.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. But I mean, he's in like I've never been to Media Days. This is in a hotel, and there's like Radio Row in this big, I guess, conference room area. So I've all morning I've been watching other people do their radio shows and eat breakfast off this live feed. Because Bill set this up for me just so I could communicate with everybody back there. But it's been pretty funny.
Let me let you in on a little secret about Media Day.
Okay.
Very overrated.
That's what I've heard.
There's nothing to it.
Well, I mean, we talk about it. I mean,
you have to talk about it but
sure,
it's I'll say going to it.
Yeah,
my opinion, overrated. You should experience it once.
Okay,
but after that, you'll be like, I can do this from home.
And I think we all know, like, we're not going to get any groundbreaking information this week. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to hand over their playbook and say, oh, these are the plays we're running. Like, it's kind of lip service to promote your own program at the end of the day, right?
So here's what will happen. If we get any actual information, and it's probably not going to be groundbreaking.
Sure.
But some tidbit of information, something new, an injury update, something like that. Anything remotely newsy from a South Carolina perspective is going to take place when Beamer does his little gaggle with the local media.
Yeah.
Because so you have all these different rooms. You have the quote unquote main room, but then the coaches and players are just being ushered through all these different rooms throughout the day.
Yeah.
Most of it will be some version of the same quotes over and over. Some of it will be, a Georgia beat writer asking every other school, their representatives about Georgia. And then, So you're going to have all that stuff mixed in.
Sure.
Well, the beat writers who cover South Carolina day to day have already asked most of the questions that are going to be asked in the big rooms probably multiple times.
Yeah.
So the only time you're going to get something new will be basically during that little session where the people who really truly cover the program on the ground and know all the details will be asking questions, and it'll be, hey, are all the guys from the spring that you thought were going to be back, are they all back full go?
Right.
Hey, Montague Rames is still not on the roster at all. It says no longer on the squad in the in the media guide. Is there anything at all new there? Beamer's going to say, no, that's being handled by other people. But basically, if there is anything new, is there any movement on the mythical depth chart that does and doesn't exist?
Oh, yes, your favorite.
Yes. Maybe a question about what the plan is at left tackle. Maybe you get an answer, maybe you don't. But, for the most part, if there's anything newsy, it'll be during that little probably 15-minute gaggle.
Well, and our man Colin's going to be boots on the ground there, getting all that good content for Gamecock Central and us as well.
Yeah, is there anything you want to know, Tyler? Because honestly, dude, I feel like a lot of the off-season stuff is repeats of stuff from the spring.
And we've heard from Beamer, obviously, out at the spring meetings. He's gone to all the welcome home events. Like, I feel like most of the questions that we have right now have, for the most part, been answered.
Or are questions that can't be answered until you play
that too.
Games, or at least have some preseason fodder to chew on,
sure.
I guess. So, I think if depending on what we get as far as some open practices, we'll get a little feel, of course, for an unofficial depth chart, but we're not going to get that this week.
Right.
For the most part, this is going to be a lot about nothing. But, hey, we got 2 weeks to kill until camp starts. So
exactly.
It'll be good for that. It'll be good for articles and clicks. And
good, convenient timing.
Yes. And then we'll really, truly get this thing rolling.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with Jay out at Media Days and Terry back here in Columbia. Coming up next here on 107.5 The Game.